everyone, this is Teresita Glasgow, and today I want to discuss or talk about mass psychosis. It's a topic that keeps coming up, and what I did was I looked it up on the internet, and so today I want to share with you an article that I ran into. I think it's really good, and so that's what I'm going to be doing today, is talking about mass psychosis. This is Politically Speaking. As always, we want you to subscribe, like, and share. Help me grow my audience. Mass psychosis. Exactly what is mass psychosis? Well, I found a wonderful article, and let's see if I can get that up. That's not what I want. I found a wonderful article, and I want to share it with you. Let's see. I'm not going to be able to read it off of the internet, but I did want you to see it. Socrates Wellness Institute is the site that I found it on. And the title is How to Create a Pandemic of Pure Mental Illness. And it's posted by Dr. Joseph Mercola. It was posted on August 19th, 2021. And it says, the title, I did read the subtitle, but the main title is Mass Psychosis. And that's exactly what I was looking for, to find out more about this topic of mass psychosis that I'm sharing with you. Dr. Mercola starts by saying technocracy defined itself in 1938 as the science of social engineering. This article sheds some light on the mechanics involved in this dark world of intentional and carefully planned manipulation of the masses. The world is currently in a state of induced psychosis, which is deepening with every new wave of fear and propaganda. How the entire population becomes mentally ill, created by after school and an academy of ideas, is a fascinating illustration of how mass psychosis can be induced. Mass psychosis is defined as an epidemic of madness that occurs when a large portion of the society loses touch with reality and descends into delusions. One classic historical example of mass psychosis is the witch hunts that occurred in the Americas and Europe during the 16th and 17th centuries, when tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were tortured, drowned, and burned alive at the stake. The rise of totalitarianism in the 20th century is a more recent example of mass psychosis. Man's worst enemy. The masses have never thirsted after truth. They turn aside from evidence that is not to their taste, preferring to deify error, if error seduce them. Whoever can supply them with illusions is easily their master. Whoever attempts to destroy their illusions is always their victim. That's a quote attributed to Gustave Le Bon, a French social psychologist renowned for his study of crowds. His book, The Crowd, A Study of the Popular Mind, takes a deep dive into the characteristics of human crowds and how, when gathered in groups, people tend to relinquish conscious deliberation in favor of unconscious crowd action. Similarly, psychologist Carl Jung once stated that, and this is a quote, "It is not famine, nor earthquakes, nor microbes, nor cancer, but man himself who is man's greatest danger to man, for the simple reason that there is no adequate protection against psychic epidemics, which are infinitely more devastating than the worst of natural catastrophes." When a society descends into madness, the results are always devastating. Jung, who studied mass psychosis, wrote that the individuals who make up the affected society become morally and spiritually corrupt. They become unreasonable, irresponsible, emotional, erratic, and unreliable. Worst of all, a psychotic mob will engage in atrocities that any solitary individual within the group would normally never consider. Yet through it all, those affected remain unaware of their condition and cannot recognize the error of their ways. What causes mass psychosis? To understand how an entire society can be driven to madness, you must first understand what drives any given individual to insanity. Barring drugs and alcohol abuse or brain injury, psychosis is typically triggered by psychogenic factors, i.e., influences that originate in the mind. One of the most common psychogenic factors that can trigger psychosis is a flood of negative emotions, such as fear or anxiety, that drives a person into a state of panic. Well, we know we've had a lot of fear and anxiety coming through this COVID pandemic. When in a panic, the natural inclination is to seek relief. A psychologically resilient individual may adapt by facing their fear and ultimately defeating it. Another coping mechanism is a psychotic break. As explained in the video, a psychotic break is not the descent into chaos, but rather a reordering of one's experiential world in a way that blends fact and fiction, reality and illusions, in such a way that a sense of control is restored and panic ends. A psychogenic steps that lead to madness can be summarized as follows. A phase of panic. Here the individual begins to perceive the world around him or her in a different way and is frightened or on account of it. There's a perceived threat, whether it be real, fabricated, or imagined. Confusion grows as they can't find a way to rationally explain the strange occurrences taking place around them. Number 2, phase of psychotic insight. Here the individual manages to explain his abnormal experiences in the world by inventing an illogical but magical way of seeing reality. The term insight is used because the magical thinking allows the individual to escape from the panic and find meaning again. However, the insight is psychotic because it's based on delusion. Just as a psychologically weak and vulnerable individual can be driven to madness, so can large groups of weak and vulnerable people descend into madness and magical thinking. Totalitarianism is a society built on delusions. In the 20th century, we've seen a rise in totalitarianism, defined by Professor Arthur Versulis as the modern phenomenon of total centralized state power coupled with the obliteration of the individual human rights. In the totalized state, there are those in power and there are objectified masses, the victims. In a totalitarian society, there are two classes, the rulers and the ruled. And both groups undergo a pathological transformation. Rulers are raised to be godlike status where they can do no wrong, a view that easily leads to corruption and unethical behavior, while the ruled are transformed into dependent subjects, which leads to psychological regression. Okay, here's a difficult name. Joost, Joost Merlo, author of Rape of the Mind, compares the reactions of citizens living in a totalitarian state to that of schizophrenics. Both rulers and ruled are ill. Both live in a disillusional fog, as the entire society and its rules are sustained by delusional thinking. Only deluded people regress to a childlike state of submissiveness, and only a deluded ruling class believe they possess the knowledge and wisdom to control society in a top-down manner. And only a deluded person will believe that a power-hungry elite ruling a mentally regressed society will result in anything but mass suffering and ultimate ruin. The mass psychosis that is totalitarianism begins within the ruling class, as the individuals within the class are easily enamored with disillusioned that argument their power. And no disillusion is greater than the disillusion they can and should, indeed, are destined to control and dominate all others. Very good article. Whether the totalitarian mindset takes the form of communism, fascism, or technocracy, a ruling elite that has succumbed to their own delusions of grandeur then sets about to indoctrinate the masses into their own twisted worldview. All that's needed to accomplish that reorganization of society is the manipulation of collective feelings. Killing the mind. Menticide is a term that means killing of the mind. It's an ancient way of controlling the masses by systematically killing the human spirit and free thought. It's a system through which the ruling elite imprints their own disillusional worldview onto society. A society is primed for menticide by the intentional sowing of fear. A particularly effective way to induce fear and panic that results in psychosis is the unleashing of waves of terror. And it doesn't matter if the terror is in question is real or fictitious. The waves of terror technique can be graphed out of any escalating wave pattern where each round of fear is followed by a round of calm. Contradictory reports, nonsensical recommendations, and blatant lies are deployed intentionally, as it heightens confusion. The more confused a population is, the greater the state of anxiety, which induces society's ability to cope with the crisis. As the ability to cope withers, the greater the chances a mass psychosis will develop. After a short period of calm, the threat level is elevated again, with each round of fear-mongering being more intense than the one before. Propaganda, fake and misleading news are used to break down the minds of the masses, and over time, it becomes easier and easier to control everyone as confusion and anxiety give way to magical thinking and psychotic insight presented as solutions through the media. Contradictory reports, nonsensical recommendations, and blatant lies are deployed intentionally, as it heightens confusion. The more confusion a population is, the more confused the population is, the greater the state of anxiety, which reduces society's ability to cope with the crisis. As the ability to cope withers, the greater the chances a mass psychosis will develop. Confusion heightens the susceptibility of a descent into the delusions of totalitarianism. As Mierlo noted in his book, logic can be met with logic, while illogic cannot. It confuses those who think straight. The big lie, the monotonously repeated nonsense, have more of an emotional appeal than logic and reason. While the people are still searching for a reasonable counter-argument to the first lie, the totalitarians can assault them with another. The rise of technocracy. What sets modern totalitarianism apart from previous totalitarian states is technology. The means to incite fear and manipulate people's thinking has never been more efficient or effective. TV, internet, smartphones, social media are all sources of information these days, and it's easier than ever to control the flow of that information, especially in cases where medical and health issues are involved. Algorithms automatically filter out the voices of reason and rational thinking, supplanting them with fear narratives instead. Modern technologies also have addictive qualities, so many voluntarily expose themselves to the brainwashing, commenting on man's reliance on technology. Mierlo notes, no rest, no medication, no reflection, no conversation. The senses are continually overloaded with stimuli. Man doesn't learn to question his world anymore. The screen offers him answers already made. Isolation. A mass psychosis inducing tool. Aside from the onslaught of fear-mongering and false propaganda, the ultimate tool to induce psychosis is isolation. When you are deprived of regular social interaction and discussions, you become more susceptible to delusions for a number of reasons. Fix my hair. Number one, you lose contact with corrective forces of positive examples, role models, or rational thinking and behavior. Not everyone is tricked by the brainwashing attempts of the ruling elite, and these people can help free others from their disillusions. When you're in isolation, the power of these individuals greatly diminishes. Number two, like animals, human behavior is significantly easier to manipulate when the individual is kept in isolation. As animal research has discovered, conditioned reflexes are most easily developed in a quiet, secluded laboratory with a minimum of stimuli to distract from the indoctrination. When you want to tame a wild animal, you must isolate the animal and patiently repeat a particular stimulus until the desired response is obtained. Humans can be conditioned in the same manner. Alone, confused, and battered by waves of terror, a society kept in isolation from each other descends into madness as rational thought is obliterated and replaced with magical thinking. I like the way he's using this term, magical thinking, because it's not reality. Okay. Once a society is firmly in the grip of mass psychosis, totalitarians are free to take the last decisive step. They can offer a way out, a return to order. That's the bait. The price of your freedom, or maybe your life. You must cede control of all aspects of your life to the rulers. because unless they are granted total control, they won't be able to create the order everyone craves. Wow. Amazing. This order, however, is a pathological one, devoid of all humanity. It eliminates the spontaneity that brings joy and creativity to one's life by demanding strict conformity and blind obedience. And despite the promise of safety, a totalitarian society is inherently fearful. It was built on fear. It is maintained by it too. So giving up your freedom for safety is a sense of order will only lead to more of the same fear and anxiety that allowed the totalitarians to gain control in the first place. You are now far less safe than ever before. Did you think they were honest and truthful? How can mass psychosis be reversed? Can totalitarianism be prevented? And can the effect of mass psychosis be reversed? Yes. But just as the menticidal approach of multi-pronged, so must the solution be. Is multi-pronged, so must the solution be. To help return sanity to an insane world, first you need to center yourself and live in such a way as to provide inspiration for others to follow. As noted by Jung, it is not for nothing that our age cries out for the Redeemer personality, for the one who can emancipate himself from the grip of the collective psychosis and save at least his own soul, who lights a beacon of hope for others, proclaiming that here is at least one man who has succeeded in extricating himself from the fatal identity of the group psyche. Next, you need to share and spread the truth, the counter-narrative to the propaganda, as far and as wide as possible, because truth is always more potent than lies. The success of propaganda relies on the censoring of truth. Another tactic is the use of humor and ridicule to delegitimize the ruling elite. A strategy proposed by, another difficult name, Václav Havel, V-A-C-L-A-V, last name H-A-V-E-L, a political dissident who became the president of Czechoslovakia, is called parallel structures. A parallel structure is a kind of business, organization, technology movement, or creative pursuit that fits within a totalitarian society while being morally outside of it. Once enough parallel structures are created, a parallel culture is born that functions as a sanctuary of sanity within the totalitarian world. Havel explains this strategy in his book, The Power of the Powerless. Last but not least, to prevent the descent into totalitarian madness, sane and rational action must be taken by as many people as possible. The totalitarian elite do not sit around twiddling their thumbs, hoping and wishing to increase their power and control. No, they are actively taking steps to augment their position, to defend against them. The would-be ruled must be just as active and resolute in their counter push toward freedom. All of this can be extremely challenging as people around you succumb to collective psychosis. But as Thomas Paine once said, tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet, we have the consolation with us that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Can you see how this scholarly thesis applies directly to the scandemic of the moment? The entire global society has been taken under scandemic and the fear and panic from an imaginary threat. And I won't read the rest because it goes into some material that I didn't realize was here. But I do realize that if I read this, I will, this video probably won't be taken seriously, or it will be blotted out. So, I think that this is an excellent article on mass psychosis. And wow, I think it's an excellent article on mass psychosis. So, wow. I hope you enjoyed me reading the article on mass psychosis. As I read through it, and I hope you had the same experience, I recognized a lot of the events that are currently taking place. Again, this article, I think I'll put a link in the video for you. But in case you don't, it's Socrates Wellness Institute. I'm totally unfamiliar with them. I did a Google search on mass psychosis, and this article came up, with many others. And this one I found very interesting. And the first time I read it was when I just read it to you guys. A lot of good information, a lot of food for thought. I hope you enjoyed my reading of the article, and I hope you'll click on, if you want to know what those last few paragraphs, I think there's about 3 or 4 paragraphs that I did not read purposely, and I didn't read them purposely because I want this video to stay up. Didn't really know that they were there. Again, hey, I'm Teresita Glasgow, and this is Politically Speaking. And I want you to like, share, and subscribe this video and help me grow my audience. Like, share, and subscribe. I'm Teresita Glasgow, and I've just read to you mass psychosis. Now we have a much better idea about several things happening in our current society. Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for liking, sharing, and subscribing, and helping me grow my audience. Bye-bye.